his court case, 2211. We're talking about squatters today. Pete is a squatter. He's squatting in London. Hello to you again, Pete. We'll see if we can get Pete back very shortly indeed. Paul Champolina is still with us, the founder of Landlord Action. We're looking to hear from you today, 0500 909 693. Edward Bauer and Kat Fraser both live and work with squatters in Birmingham. Edward, morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning, Edward. Morning, Kat.
Morning.
Good morning, good morning. Well, Edward, what's your reaction to the government's news that they're to change the law from midnight tonight? It'll become a criminal offence in England and Wales to be a squatter in a residential property.
I'm intensely sad and incredibly angry. I think we need to put some sense of perspective on this entire debate. There's about 2,000 to 3,000 people living homeless in Birmingham. There's also 26,000 people on the waiting list for council homes, and there's an estimated shortage of social housing of about 11,000 homes as well. It's getting really hard for people to keep a roof over their head, and people need to squat just to keep alive. Basically, the average life expectancy of someone living rough on the street is about 42 years. If people aren't going into abandoned buildings because they've got nowhere else to go, they will literally die. And because of this law, it's going to criminalise the very means that homeless people need to live. It's criminalising being homeless effectively, and people will die. And it's really, really sad.
And just to be clear, therefore, do you have sympathy with those people we hear from who they leave their home to go off on a holiday, they go abroad, they come back, and someone is in their home? Do you think those squatters should leave immediately? I'm talking obviously about buildings which are not long-term. Empty.
Of course, I've got absolute sympathy with them. You have to be inhuman not to. What I'm angry with are the banks and the property speculators who are simply sitting on large amounts of property. They're not investing in it, and the housing market, despite there being such a big demand for new housing, is simply not building. And I'm also angry with the government because they're not building new social housing, but we badly need. I talked to some stats earlier about the amount of houses we already need in Birmingham, but we're also projected in the next decade to need another 70,000 homes just to meet the rising population. So unless new homes start getting built by a decade's time, we're going to need 100,000 new homes in Birmingham. Where are people going to stay? I'm angry for homeowners and I'm angry for the homeless and everyone else. It's awful.
Let me read this text to you from Bill in Cambridge. He was talking about Pete, who was another squatter who was on earlier on, and he said, this man's talking rubbish. The vast majority of squatters couldn't give a monkey's about the property and its owner. To try to claim they do this for some type of greater good is absolutely outrageous. Getting something for free is what it's all about, plain and simple. When we have to work our whole lives to get a home together, this makes me so angry.
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, the guy you had on earlier was actually talking rubbish. Most squatters are liberal artists living in London, opening their houses up to the community. They're doing it because they're homeless, they're the invisible, most vulnerable people in our society, and they need to do it, otherwise they're out on the street. I very much doubt you'll manage to get one of those on the programme this morning to talk about the circumstances in their lives that have driven them to that level of desperation that means they have to go into some abandoned property just to keep a roof over their heads.
The property, says another texter, belongs to someone else. End of story. Squatters are freeloaders, and until now they've been above the law. They should pay their tax, pay their rent, and stop preying on the rest of us.
Absolutely ridiculous. The current law is, if you're a landlord, you have to apply for a possession order. You can get one of those within 24 hours. The squatters are straight out. If they stay beyond them, they're committing a crime. Right now, though, if there's new law coming in, all that's going to happen is the police are going to come around the house, see a bunch of homeless people sleeping in it, perhaps even arrest them, and maybe even put them into prison. And that's not going to help anyone get their life back on track.
It's going to help the landlord
for being homeless.
It's going to help the landlord.
Yeah, but it helps the landlord, but people will actually die because they're going to get thrown out onto the streets. They need somewhere to stay. Unless the government takes this responsibility seriously, what's going to happen to the thousands of people squatting in Birmingham now? The police are going to curse them out onto the street. There's not the hostels for them to go into. There's nowhere for them to go.
But the landlords are not charities.
The landlords.
They're not charities.
But they might lose. Come on, put this in perspective here.
Come on, it's their homes. It's their homes. It's their property. It's for the government to look after people who cannot afford a home, who genuinely cannot afford a home. It is not for a private investor, is it?
really angry at the government and at the banks. I feel sorry for the homeowners. They've been thrown into the situation because they've been let down by both the market and the property market and of course the government. But the answer is not now just to throw people out into the streets and make them criminals and to arrest them. That's just simply not enough.
Paul Champolina?
Yeah, I mean,
you're the founder of Landlord Action. You're representing landlords today.
Yeah, I actually met Ed and Kat this morning actually because I was doing some filming at their squat. I think a lot of what Ed is talking is sense to a certain extent, but it still detracts from the fact that it's someone else's property, and in most eyes it's effectively stealing. You can't classify an empty property with the same brush that it's like I said to you before, it's a big landlord, and they're not going to miss the money, and it's empty. We have a massive social problem, which obviously the government have got to get to grips with, and I think obviously the enforcement procedure for landowners and landlords is going to be better, probably back quicker. But Ed talks about, it's easy to go to court and get a court order. Well, getting a court order can cost £2,000-3,000, and it can take, in fact, 2 to possibly 3 months.
Let me come back to this in just a second. Let me come back to this in just a second, guys, because I want to try to get more on this court ruling today, which is ruled in favour of the Chelsea owner, Roman Abramovich. This in the multi-billion-pound dispute with the fellow oligarch Boris Berezovsky. Our correspondent Richard Galpin has the details. There was a lot of money at stake here, Richard.
Oh, an absolutely huge amount of money, yes. Mr. Berezovsky was suing Mr. Abramovich for at least £3 billion. And the case itself, bringing this case to court, according to some reports, has cost tens of millions for those involved. So it is a huge case, and we have had the judge in the past few minutes announcing that Mr. Berezovsky has lost both cases. There were several cases involved in this. One of the main one was over an oil company called Sibneft, but there was also one about shares in a huge aluminium company called Rusal. And according to the judge, Mr. Berezovsky has lost both of those cases. And reporters inside the court, obviously I'm outside now speaking to you, but reporters inside saying that Mr. Berezovsky looked very, very crestfallen, as you might imagine. As he went in, I asked him, how confident are you of winning? And he said, I'm confident, I believe in the system, but it's gone against him.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Some other news coming into several thousand people in Spain, including several hundred British expats, have been evacuated from their houses after a wildfire near the southern city of Malaga. The British Embassy indicates at least 300 people have been relocated in evacuation centres. It says it's working closely with the Spanish authorities, and consular staff have been deployed to assist those affected. The fire, still not under control, has affected a large area of countryside near Marbella. The coastal part of the region, where most tourists are, is unaffected, and we'll have more reaction to those fires in this programme. We'll come back to the squatting debate. I can see some of you calling us this morning. 0500 909 693, 0500 909 693, the text 85058. If you do want to pick up the phone, not a problem. Now, there's been early success in the pool for Paralympics GB. We'll be having a look at that very, very shortly indeed. Kat is with us this morning. Kat, morning for you.
Morning to you.
Morning to you, Kat. Now, you live and work with squatters in Birmingham. You live with squatters, so you are a squatter, is that right?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, and what type of house is it?
It's an abandoned house on a park that's been empty for longer than any of the neighbours can remember. And what we've done is we've taken over the abandoned house, which is council-owned, and we're looking to make it the first of a new stock of homes in Birmingham and making it livable, and then handing it over to somebody who's homeless, who doesn't necessarily have the skills to be able to put the house in place and take off the streets and do that. And that's something that we feel that the council isn't doing enough of. You know, the numbers of homeless people since 2009 and the recession has gone up by 25%. And the council spending, of course, because councils have to cut their spending, it's hard times, has gone down by 29%. And I think with all of the changes happening with the local housing allowances, it's just going to cause for real problems. And you've got to think of who's squatting and why they're squatting rather than arrest them. So
you own a home elsewhere, do you?
I rent a house elsewhere, and I work with some of the people who don't have a house, and also working in the squat. So volunteering my time, in effect, to increase the quality of life of people who don't necessarily have those chances themselves.
You rent a house elsewhere.
Yes, I do.
Why don't you give your house away for free?
Why don't I actually do? I have people living in my house, whenever they need to go and stay, because I think that's really important. It's act as a community and work together to try and resolve it, rather than putting the law ahead of people's lives.
So you don't rent your house for money?
Of course I do, yeah.
You do? But
Yes.
why do you not rent it for free?
I think it's irrelevant really to the point about my personal situation.
Well, it's not irrelevant though, Kat, is it? It's not irrelevant.
People who are homeless on the streets. There are 3,000 people homeless on the streets, and the council count homeless figures of people living on the streets.
Sure.
As soon as you make it illegal for those people to squat, they have absolutely no choice but to either be a criminal or to live on the streets. And the government themselves have not even put proper estimated figures into how much it's going to cost. The Guardian said it's going to cost £790 million in the first 5 years because of all of the housing benefit take-up and the homeless rehabilitation. A lot of squatters are actually very much under the system and not costing as much money as the government thinks.
The reason I asked you the personal question, Kat, is because I think it's relevant in that if you believe that you are entitled to go in and take a council house that you don't own and allow people to live in that for free, why do you not follow the same principle in your personal life and allow squatters to live in your home for free? You're renting your home on a private basis and wanting money, and you're asking the council and others to essentially give it away for nothing.
The council have got it empty. It's completely run down, and the houses are falling apart. And what we're doing is stopping that, halting it, making the council recognise that there are houses that are being decrepit that can be rescued, and actually they're trying to invest in building new properties when there's a lot of properties already existing that are completely wasted. And it's that waste that is totally unacceptable, and the law is just going to increase the waste and mean that there's going to be even more empty properties, which is absolutely scandalous.
But maybe the council can't afford to refurbish the property.
Well, the council actually, as soon as we went into the property this week, have announced that actually they're going to be investing some money into doing the regeneration of the properties. So actually what we have been doing is working, because the council have instantly recognised and had to answer to us and put some money aside. The problem is, of course, council processes take an awful long time. They've got 11,000 properties. How much paper pushing does that take?
It's a principle of ownership, this, Paul Champlina, isn't it? In terms
of... It's not about the principle of ownership, it's about the squatters. It's trying to evict squatters. And you've got to think about who the squatters are and what they're doing it for. And if they actually have no other choice. And it's the people, I have a choice. I can live in a house. But there are lots of people who don't have that choice.
I think in this instance, with regards to the squat, because I saw the squat today, I think it's really a cry out to the council. It's really a petition, if anything, because the people that I met weren't. I think there was maybe one or two people there who were living there full time. The rest of the people lived elsewhere locally, and then they were just doing shifts with regard to the squat, so that the council, Birmingham Council, can stand up and look at the problem in that area with regard to the empty properties they have. And I understand why that action has happened to a certain extent, but you're dealing with you're talking about the council, but it is about private ownership, and again it comes down to that small landlord, that small homeowner that do get massively affected.
We'll come back to this in just a second. There has been early success in the pool for Paralympics